Hey everybody, it is the part 2 of my solo improv here. So this is all kind of new going live here because I have 1,000 windows I have to switch between. So I'm going to try to keep one open so I can see if anybody is actually asking anything. So let's start with what I'm going to show you. So we talked about pentatonics last night. I introduced you to 5 patterns. So let's bring up my blues pentatonic here. We talked about here, let me actually switch to the pentatonics to kind of go over what the last one was. And pentatonic scales, right? So let me find my window here. So I'll go back to the beginning. So we had 5 patterns that we talked. Let's take it off some delay here. So I'm using this Line 6 Helix that has just been awesome for me. And just when you get some time, if you don't know what it is, take a look at it. And I was totally against doing this kind of stuff live, so I used an 11 rack for a long time with my Pro Tools at least, home studio, and that worked great. And then people talked about using it live, but you didn't find a lot of people that were doing that. So I picked up the Helix as just really kind of a replacement for the studio, and then saw the big community out there. Chad Boston runs the Line 6 Helix user group. I think he's called it the original group now, and it's, I don't know, up to over 4,000 members. So I've been a part of that for a while. Great group, people from Line 6 in there, as well as other artists, national artists, things like that. And it's a really cool way to talk about anything related to this, problems, whatever. Chad's got a great premium group that he talks about, and you can sign up for, and he'll do private, tech help for you for the Helix. It's real cool. So kind of a shout out to Chad. So back to the lesson here. So and I used to have a long time ago, I had a lesson out there on iTunes for a podcast, 2007 or 6, something like that. Always was kind of felt like I was ahead of technology, where it could really take me and where I could kind of reach out to as many people as I could. And the production on that podcast was kind of crazy. It really took a lot out of me, and it took probably 8 hours to do what I could do here. Not, obviously lighting's not the greatest or whatever, but I can do this live, and I can interact with people eventually, right, when people kind of hear about this. And that's kind of what I'm going for, is to be able to have some sort of social thing going on where I can get back to kind of doing what I like to do and teaching people, and I don't have to worry about necessarily having official guitar lessons, because that can get kind of, with my schedule, kind of like, it's like a commitment, right? You have to get here, have people show up at your house, teach them, do whatever, and you get paid for it, but hey, you're getting these for free. So this is part 2, if you're just joining, which there's nobody joining. But we talked about the 5 patterns. Most people start with pentatonic scales anyway. I mean, that's the I see that window over there. Let me see if I can close that and get that. It's not so bright on you guys. Looking different. It looks so different. See if we still have some light. So we went through all the patterns here to kind of give you, my goal was always to have something that you could sit there and you could use the whole entire neck. Because we talked about pattern 1 and pattern 6 being the same. Pattern 1, pattern 6, and then it starts over from there. Pattern 2, and then the pattern everybody knows, pattern 3. And so, you know, when you're starting to play with those, now when you start to learn them, you can just kind of skip around and find different patterns that you like. And maybe those are, you know, things for another lesson to actually show you different patterns that you can play with this. And then you can mix this next lesson that I'll be doing is starting with the major scales. So I might introduce that. I'll probably introduce some of that today, but at least open this up to the blues scale. So that's kind of, you can call the pentatonic scales blues scales. What I learned and what I studied was basically this, you know, an official blues pentatonic would be. So adding this blue note. Well, it really is on the C pentatonic is going to be an E flat, a flatted third. C, right? So you can add that flatted third to make it a blues pentatonic scale. So let me bring up that chart. All right, so what I have now is this chart up here. Hopefully you can see it in the resolution. Just make sure it changes on the live feed. And it's so delayed I can't even, there we go. Okay. So now, you look here, we got the same, I only did it in one pattern, but pattern 3, or like I said in yesterday's lesson, it could be pattern 1 for some of you guys. Whatever. It's just a pattern. Who cares what number it is? So if you have pattern 3 here, here's your regular pentatonic, right? If we add the flatted third, adds a little bit of a kind of a twist to it, right? So you're playing, you know. So it adds a nice little variation to the regular pentatonic. And you can do that for all the patterns. Just remember if you're in the key of C, which we are, and then we talked, the reason why I put A minor, I talked about yesterday, A minor being relative to C. So what that means is that they all share the same notes. You just start on one and you end on one, right? So you start here, I'm starting on a C, and ending on a C, right? If I go A minor, we go 3 frets down or 1.5 steps. That's what that is. And those are called intervals, right? 1.5 steps. So half, 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 1.5. That's how you can always figure that relative minor out. So somebody says, we're going to be jamming out in E. You say E major, E minor. They might go, I don't know. Let's try E minor. Okay, so I'm going to find my E. I have an open one. I can play, the easiest way to do all this, like I was saying last night, was taking those pentatonics and saying, okay, pattern 3, my easiest one to remember. I'm going to start with, I used to, it's been a while since I've taught, so for me to get back into what I used to call it, I used to call this finger my minor finger and this my major finger. So my index, my minor, major, pinky, and I would take that pattern 3 and I would put it down, lay my fingers down and go, okay, here's my major, there's my pinky, or here's my minor. And wherever it falls, that's what it is. So in the case of E minor, take my first finger, I'm going to go up to my double dots here, to my E. There's my E minor. Then I'll play a E minor chord. You can look at say Metallica, they write everything. I just put this as an example. It doesn't matter if you don't like them. Metallica uses everything, you know. You could sit there all day and solo just from here. I could sit there all day on pattern 3, and now that I've given you all those patterns, now I can connect those. Now you might look and go, well, now you've taken me out of my comfort zone here, and you've put me into different patterns. Remember I said pattern 1 and pattern 6 are the same. So if I remember pattern 6 in the last patterns I was doing, it's here, you know. I'm just memorizing dots on the fretboard. Don't worry about frets or anything, I just memorize a pattern. I'm going to take that pattern here, let's say, and I was saying in E minor. Pattern 2. Now you're like, pattern 1, it's weird, I can't really translate it from the open. Pattern 6, 1 and 6 are the same. Wrong notes. I gotta practice. So those are those things, is, you know, and I guess sometimes I used to ask the students, you know, what would help better for me to explain this better? Because for me, you know, it's like one of those people that explain things over and over again, and then eventually you look at it and you say, maybe it's just me and the way I explain things. Maybe I'm just not explaining it right. But I think that this formula is easy to understand, because I can't do the first part for you. You have to be able to just memorize those patterns. So let's go back to this blues pentatonic. Where is it? There it is. Okay. So pretty easy to remember. I've stopped on the 5 on the first string, which is our E string. I've stopped there just so you can hear the root notes. But, you know, for patterns, it doesn't matter, you know, where you stop. You know, no one's going to say, oh, I got to stop that scale here because it's just not right. No, you just play it, you know. So I always like to do things like, I heard John Mayer, he's got this cool thing he does where he'll do a little less gain, right? And my pedal was not set up for that kind of stuff, but so he would do cool things. Of course, he has a much better flair for it than I do, right? So, but when he would play, I mean, he's I don't say he's king of the blues, but I really like his feel for a lot of stuff. And over the years, he's gotten into other things. But what was I saying? Okay, so enough of that one. So what I wanted to do was kind of introduce a little bit of the improv and putting in some major and minor scales. So you can really throw, because the pentatonic has less notes in it. So penta meaning 5, right? So it has less notes. So there are, you know, when you're harmonizing with something that you're writing, you end up putting that extra note in there, and then it throws the feel off of it. So you kind of have to gauge what you're playing with, what scales you want to put in there. But it definitely gives you some more options. And if you're in this next part, for these next scales, will really open you up for a lot of other soloing opportunities. So let's bring up my full scales here. Window capture, let's see, A minor. I don't think I have it up. Sorry guys, hold on. I'm gonna close out too many windows going on here. Man, I need like a person that actually will drive for me. Wouldn't that be cool? So I'll wait for that to change on there because I know we got a delay, and then I'll talk about it. And I guess I could have broken up these lessons in here, but maybe we can get this part out of the way and then get onto some really neat stuff later. All right, so let me start off this. So a major scale, and I mentioned some of this last night. A major scale has 8 notes in it, right? The first part, a do. You've heard it back in elementary, maybe. If they still, I don't know if they still teach it, but I hope they do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, and we assign a number to each note. So that's how a lot of people will talk things. Okay, that's a flatted third. Oh, that's a sharped, or a flatted third and a flatted fifth. That's this type of chord. And it's just a better way of musicians to communicate with each other, right? So what I've done here is I've got what they call a 2-octave scale. And octave stands for what? OCT. It's 8. So we take first octave. If you look, and I thought I'd written them on here, but I guess it didn't export right. So we've got first note is C. That first part ends up on the 5th fret. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Probably can't. Ends up on the 5th fret of the G string, or 3rd string. And you're always counting 1, 2, 3 from the bottom up. So that ends on the C, and then we continue it up. We continue up onto the 1st string, ending at the 8th fret. So we've got 1 octave, 2nd octave. And what I'm doing again here is I'm going to show you what they call the root 5 and root 6 positions. Root of any chord or scale is that chord name's note. So a root of a C major chord is C. The root of our C major scale is C. So we're going to start on the 3rd fret, and that's on the root 5. When I say root 5, it means 5th string. Again, there's thousands of ways of teaching. This is just the way I taught in the past. So some of you guys might get on here and go, "Oh my gosh, this is horrible. This way, this is the better way of teaching." There's a million ways to get your point across, and this is just what works for me, and hopefully it works for you. So. Then I'm going to take that a step further. I'm going to go to our root 6, starting at the 8th fret of my 6th string, my E string. So now I've just covered 6 frets. I'm going to cover 6 or 7 more. So now I'm getting more of the neck coverage here. 1st octave. So technically this will stop. The 2nd root, or the 2nd octave, stops on the 13th fret, which is the C note, on my 2nd string, the B string. But to keep things in line, I just kind of keep going, right? So we can practice these, over and over again, alternate picking, things like that, ending on the F note. So it just keeps things even, right? But you can stop if you want to hear the end of it. This chair is uncomfortable. Oops. Right? So that right there you can start on, 1st string, end on the 6th. Oh, sorry, start on the 6th, end on the 1st, and go back down. I would sit for hours, and I would sit here and practice alternate picking, and it's been a long time. And I'm 43 right now, so I've been playing since I was like 12. So I remember sitting, in high school in the garage and just practicing over, for 5 hours a day. And that's really that's what it takes. And there's so many resources now, YouTube, things like that you can just whatever you want to learn, it's out there. And it's really crazy that, I'm sure if I would have had that growing up, probably would have been a lot better. So, and I always had a hard time going back down. So, fast, it just never was very good. I'm not even going to try to even do it because I'm embarrassing myself. So that is the Root 5 and Root 6 C major scales. What I want to do is I'm going to go back to the song, end with this song here. So I'm going to end with the blues part I was doing earlier, and I'll show you, and we can talk for a minute or two after it, but I'm going to show you a combination of Root 5 and Root 6 scales along with the blues scales that we learned. And you can hear how it goes, and you can hear how it changes the tone too. So it may not stick. That's why a lot of guys don't necessarily put that in there. I mean, when you're strictly blues guys, they're going to just stay within their pentatonics, But you can throw little notes here and there in it. So let me start this here. Major scales. Puts a different feel to it totally. So you can kind of add some of those in there. If I had time, I'd bring up some of the other stuff that. So if I had more time and had an example, I would show you where these major and minor scales where they really start to shine. And a lot of times it's, you got stuff like this, right? So I can get a little cleaner tone. That's too clean here. We're out of tune from all the lead playing. Doing that kind of stuff, it really comes in, where you can actually do some really nice stuff, and you can put blues stuff in there too. So what I'll do on the next part, and probably that final part of the improvisation stuff, was I'll record something where you can really use those scales. And I guess I should have noted earlier is I keep this in E flat tuning, so that should have been said right at the beginning. So it's not really meant to play along with this lesson. It's more meant to just show you what you could do, and you can use any tuning you want. So I hope this is useful, and any comments you want to make for things you like to see, if I can physically do them on the guitar, good. But this is kind of a one of these social experiments for me to see how well this kind of takes off. And there's no pressure of me doing lessons on a regular basis, so I can kind of come in when I need to and show you guys some things. And it'll be different stuff, like talking about my pedal board and other equipment I use live, and some things maybe it would be kind of discussions on problems and things that you might come up with when you're playing. And but I'm really digging the Helix and what it can do in the studio and what it can do live, and how you can play things on recordings and take them directly out to play out, which is really really helpful. So have a good day, and we'll talk to you guys later.